version. Namaste and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Om Sarva Jiva Papa Nashakaranam Bhaveshwaram Swikritang Garbhavasa Deha Pashamidrisham Yapitam Swalilaya Chayena Divya Jivanam Yapitam Swalilaya Chayena Divya Jivanam Tannamami Deva Deva Ramakrishna Mishwaram. Om Shri Vivekanandari Satchishya Supujitaya Shri Sharada Devya Virata Sevitaya Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsaya Avatara Varishtaya Chate Namaha. Om Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadattatam Bhuvi Grinantiye Bhurida Jana. So in the Gospel, we are in the midst of the date April 15th, 1883, and page 212, about two-thirds of the way down the page. Sri Ramakrishna has come to Surendranath Mitra's house. Surendra was a very dear devotee of Sri Ramakrishna and was one of his rasadhars, that is, one of the people who supplied his needs. In fact, he was the one who paid all of the rent at the Kashipur Garden House when Sri Ramakrishna had later to move to the Kashipur Garden House. And he also was the one who paid for the young disciples for the Baranagor Mutt for them to stay in after Sri Ramakrishna passed away. So he was having the Annapurna Puja at his house and had invited Sri Ramakrishna, and a number of friends and devotees had come. So they were just in the midst of where we left off last time. They were in the midst of Kirtan. There was a Vaishnava group that was singing Kirtan, and Sri Ramakrishna was dancing and singing in ecstasy. So the master danced and sang. All remained spellbound as they watched. The chief musician sang the words of a gopi. "O flute, pray stop. Can you not go to sleep?" One of the musicians added a new line. "How can it sleep? It rests on Krishna's lips." And so, of course, this is a song on the Vrindavan Leela between Krishna and the gopis. The master sat down. The music went on. They sang, assuming the mood of Radha. "My eyes are blinded," goes the song. "My ears are deaf. I have lost the power of smell. All my senses are paralyzed. But alas, why am I left alone?" So here this song is speaking of the state of one in extreme longing for God, where the longing for God is so great, the longing of the gopis for Krishna, or which represents the longing of the soul for God, where the longing of the soul is so great that the senses themselves shut down. You're not interested in anything out here. And so he mentions that all of the sense, the eyes, the ears, the sense of smell, everything has shut down. And yet asks the question, but why am I left alone? That is, my longing is so strong, why has Krishna not come? Finally, the musicians sang of the union of Radha and Krishna. So after the intense longing of the gopis for Krishna, or of the soul for Krishna. And then comes union with God. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when you see intense longing in a person, intense and prolonged longing of the soul for God, then know that that is like the rosy hue in the sky before the rising of the sun. That you know when you see the rosy hue in the sky that the sun is going to rise. And so when you see in a person intense and prolonged longing for God, then know that the vision of God is not long in coming. So they sang a song of the union of Radha and Krishna. Radha and Krishna are joined at last in the Nidhu grove of Vrindavan. Incomparable their beauty and limitless their love. The one half shines like yellow gold, the other like bluest sapphire. Round the neck on one side a flower garland hangs, and on the other there swings a necklace of precious gems. A ring of gold adorns one ear, a ring of shell the other. Half of the brow is bright as the blazing midday sun. The other softly gleams with the glow of the rising moon. Upon one half of the head a graceful peacock feather stands, and from the other half there hangs a braid of hair. So here it's speaking of the union of Radha and Krishna, of course. And so it's as if they have become one body. So half is the golden color of Radha and half the sapphire blue of Sri Krishna, and so forth. So all of the descriptions are describing half of the face as Radha, half of the face as Krishna, because they've joined in union now. As the music came to a close, the master said, "Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan," and bowed down to the devotees seated on all sides. He touched with his forehead the ground made holy by the singing of the sacred music. So this refers to a vision that Sri Ramakrishna had, and which he, a result of which he often used to use the speak of this Trinity, Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan. That is, he saw once when a priest was reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam in front of the Radha Govinda temple at Dakshineshwar. He saw a light come from the image, touch the Bhagavata, and then touch the heart of the Pandit who is reading, showing him that the three are one. So you may ask, how did that show that the three are one? It could just be a light connecting the three. What does that mean, that the three are one? No, as I've explained at other times, when a person has a genuine vision like that, the meaning is not obscure. One sees something that Sri Ramakrishna saw, and the meaning is imprinted on the mind. So a vision is not just a visual experience. It's not just seeing something. It's that which is seen is filled with profound meaning. It may take a lifetime to work out the implications of that meaning, but the immediate experience is one of deep and profound meaning. So it wasn't just seeing a light coming from the image to the text and then to the heart of the devotee. He saw immediately that that light was connecting the three in unity, that all three are the same. So he would often say, Bhagavata Bhakta Bhagavan. He taught that to Keshav Sen also. Keshav actually would repeat that, but he couldn't say some of the other things that Sri Ramakrishna tried to teach him. Like Guru Krishna, I forget what there's another Trinity, I always forget that one. But it included Guru Krishna and maybe Vaishnava or something, I don't remember what it was. But again, that was the meaning of the statement. And so it's significant that Sri Ramakrishna bowed down and touched his head to the ground where the singing and dancing had taken place, the ground which had been sanctified. I heard that Swami Shraddhananda, whom some of you knew, the long-time head of the first head and long-time head of the Sacramento Center, first under Swami Ashokananda and then as an independent center. Before he came to America, he was editor of the Udbodhan magazine, and at Bellermut, after the feeding of prasad to the devotees on a special occasion, I don't know if it was Sri Ramakrishna's birthday or what, but the devotees would be given leaf plates with khichdi, rice and dal and vegetables cooked together. And they would eat it on the grounds, and then, of course, because it was on leaf plates, the khichdi would fall all over the ground. And so when the devotees had eaten prasad, and thousands of devotees, when the devotees had eaten and had left the place, Swami Shraddhananda got on the ground and rolled on the ground because of the gathering of devotees eating the holy prasad. So that is a state that comes to a sentiment. It's no more than a sentiment. It's a spontaneous feeling that this ground has been sanctified, and you want to sanctify yourself by touching it. So even Sri Ramakrishna had that reaction. It was now about 9:30 in the evening. Surendra entertained the master and the devotees with a sumptuous feast. When it was time to take leave of their host, the master, the devotees, and Surendra entered the worship hall and stood before the image. Surendra to the master, "No one has sung anything about the Divine Mother today." So that is strange, that it's a festival in honor of Annapurna, a form of the Divine Mother. But they had invited a Vaishnava party to come and to sing kirtan, and so all of the songs had been Vaishnava songs. Nothing had been sung to the Divine Mother herself. So obviously Surendra just realized that that had happened. And Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he heard kirtan, when people were singing, whether it was just some of his devotees who informally sang in his presence at Dakshineshwar, or there was a kirtan party, he always wanted to end kirtan with a song of the Divine Mother, both because the Divine Mother was his Ishta, and that by hearing a song of the Divine Mother, his mind would be more willing to remain in the relative plane, seeing this as the play of the Divine Mother. If he heard too many songs about Shiva, then his mind would go to the Absolute and would not want to come back. And so he always insisted on having a song to the Divine Mother to close any kirtan. Master, pointing to the image, look at the beauty of the hall. The light of the Divine Mother seems to have lighted the whole place. Such a sight fills the heart with joy. Grief and desire for pleasure disappear. But one cannot see God. But can one not see God as formless reality? Of course one can, but not if one has the slightest trace of worldliness. The rishis of olden times renounced everything and then contemplated Satchidananda, the indivisible Brahman. The Brahmajnanis of modern times, that is the followers of the Brahmo Samaj, sing of God as immutable, homogeneous. It sounds very dry to me. It seems as if the singers themselves don't enjoy the sweetness of God's bliss. One doesn't want a refreshing drink made with sugar candy if one is satisfied with mere coarse treacle. For those of you who don't know what treacle is, because in America nobody knows treacle. Those from India will know it, but an American would have no idea what treacle is. Most of us would not. Treacle is a syrup made like many of us had as kids in lieu of maple syrup for eating pancakes and French toast. A syrup made from sugar candy and brown sugar syrup. So just see how happy you are looking at this image of the divine deity. But those who always cry after the formless reality do not get anything. They realize nothing either inside or outside. So here again, Sri Ramakrishna, many of his devotees and disciples had been deeply influenced by the Brahmo Samaj. And the Brahmo Samaj, as you know, was a reform movement which taught against the worship of images. And so that's why Sri Ramakrishna was speaking strongly here. Usually, Sri Ramakrishna's tendency was to say that whether you worship God with form or without form, it's all the same. You choose whichever you like. M, for instance, who recorded the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he preferred to think of God without form. But here Sri Ramakrishna is speaking somewhat strongly, and that must have been because of the audience he was speaking to. That here he saw that these people were resisting imagining, of course. We don't know what actually transpired in Sri Ramakrishna's mind, but it seems likely that we could extrapolate that Sri Ramakrishna saw that the devotees, they were only held back by this hesitation from thinking of God with form. And so he was telling them that how here you see the image. It's something that the mind can grasp, something the eyes can see. The beauty, you can actually experience the beauty. But you sit and think the formless God, the formless God. You get some conception, but the mind can't hold on to it. To think of the formless, how can you think of the formless? You can't. The mind only thinks in terms of form. And then the beauty of the formless, what beauty? You can't even conceive of it. You can't see anything. You can't conceive of it. You only have some vague idea. And so where is the beauty? Where is the strength of meditation? And so again, he's saying, as he always would say on other occasions, that the formless God also is good. Those who want that, then they can meditate. And he taught methods for meditating on the formless God. But here he's speaking strongly in favor of the worship of God with form. That is, in the avatara or in a deity, because there again, the mind can conceive of it, the mind can hold on to it, the mind can feel love towards it because it's something tangible right there. The idea of the formless, we can think of it for a few minutes conceptually, but soon as we turn our mind away, then it's gone. But here you have a face that you can look at. You have a form that you can look at. You can feel a sense of relationship. And you can see the beauty of the image as well. So just see how happy you are looking at this image of the deity. But those who always cry after the formless reality do not get anything. They realize nothing either inside or outside. The Master sang a song to the Divine Mother. O Mother, ever blissful as thou art, do not deprive thy worthless child of bliss. My mind knows nothing but thy lotus feet. The king of death scowls at me terribly. Tell me, Mother, what shall I say to him? It was my heart's desire to sail my boat across the ocean of this mortal life. O Durga, with thy name upon my lips, I never dreamt that thou wouldst drown me here in the dark waters of this shoreless sea. Both day and night I swim among its waves, chanting thy saving name. Yet even so there is no end, O Mother, to my grief. If I am drowned this time in such a plight, no one will ever chant thy name again. So here the author of the song is giving a threat to the Divine Mother, that I have chanted your name so much, I prayed day and night. And so if I die without you having come to me, then who is going to believe that your name has saving power? Who is going to believe you anymore? So you have to save me. You have to come to me. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that we have to exercise tamasic bhakti. That is the bhakti of the, say, of the dacoit, of the highway robber. That you must show yourself to me. Oh Mother, I've given up everything for you. You can't hide from me. You must show yourself to me. And so that is the feeling of this, the mood of this song. So Surendra had said that there have been no songs to the Divine Mother, so Sri Ramakrishna himself sang one. Again he sang, repeat, O mind, my Mother Durga's hallowed name. Whoever treads the path repeating Durga, Durga, Shiva himself protects with his almighty trident. Thou art the day, O Mother, thou art the dusk, and the night. Sometimes thou art man, and sometimes woman art thou. Thou mayest say to me, step aside, go away. Yet I shall cling to thee, O Durga. Unto thy feet as thine anklets I shall cling, making their tinkling sound. So, let's see, I don't think it, oh yes, it does continue. Mother, when as the kite thou soarest in the sky, and again, for those of you who don't know, because in the West people don't know, a kite is not the a toy, but the bird, a bird of prey. Mother, when as the kite thou soarest in the sky, there in the water beneath, as a minnow, I shall be swimming. Upon me wilt thou pounce, and pierce me through with thy claws. Thus, when the breath of life forsakes me in thy grip, do not deny me the shelter of thy lotus feet. And so here also a very beautiful song expressing the longing for Durga, for the Divine Mother, and the power of the Divine Mother's name, and the desire to be completely surrendered to the Divine Mother. The Master saluted the Divine Image. As he came down the steps, he called softly to Rakal, that is the future Swami Brahmananda. Where are my shoes? Are they missing? As the Master got into the carriage, Surendra and the other devotees bowed down before him. Then the carriage started for Dakshineshwar. The moon still lighted the streets. And so there, again, Mahendranath Gupta always gives a touch of the ambience, the appearance of things around, so that people can visualize the scene where Sri Ramakrishna comes and the carriage starts for Dakshineshwar, and the moon lighting the streets, so that the mind can easily picture the scene. So that's the end of this chapter. And so I'll begin the next chapter. If it had been a little longer, I would have stopped here, but that was a very short reading. So let me begin the next chapter, which is in the English Gospel, the Master with the Brahmo devotees. Again, the Bengali Gospel, the Kathamrita, is divided differently, as would be the Vachanamrita, the Hindi Gospel as well. But this begins the Master with the Brahmo devotees, Part 2, April 22nd, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna paid a visit to Beni Madhav Pal's garden house at Sinti near Calcutta on the occasion of the semi-annual festival of the Brahmo Samaj. Many devotees of the Samaj were present and sat around the Master. Now and then some of them asked him questions. A Brahmo devotee, Sir, what is the way? Master, attachment to God, or in other words, love for him. And secondly, prayer. So here, whenever something like this is asked, then that's a time to pay attention. Someone asks him, Sir, what is the way? And so it would be interesting, I don't know if anyone has done it, but it would be interesting to go through the Kathamrita, the Gospel, and see how many times that was asked, and then to see what different answers Sri Ramakrishna gave. For instance, sometimes he said, among other things, he said sadhu sangha, holy company, keeping holy company. But here he gives two things. One is attachment to God, that is love to God, and the second thing is prayer. So Sri Ramakrishna, two of the main things that he taught in all of his teachings, aside from the harmony of all religions and so forth, Holy Mother said that that was not his most important teaching, that was just a result of his great love for God and his desire to taste God in all different forms. It wasn't something he set out to do, that I'm going to see if all religions are true and let me experience all of them and see. No, it was something that came from the fullness of his love for God, as well as his natural holy curiosity. But the two things that he emphasized more than anything, one was love for God, attachment for God, yearning for God, longing for God, which he called Vyakulata in Bengali, or Vyakulata in Sanskrit. Vyakulata meaning intense longing. So intense longing for God, which here he calls attachment to God. And another thing that he says over and over again is the value of prayer, and advises people to pray to God with a longing heart. Surely God will listen to your prayer. As I quote often, Sri Ramakrishna would say that God hears even the footfall of an ant. Will he not hear the prayer of a devotee? So he constantly affirmed the fact that God does hear our prayer. If we don't see results, if we don't get answers, it's not because God didn't hear it. It's because the time is not yet right for us to get the answer. And so we have to go on praying. So these two were two of the main teachings. The third was renunciation. But he put attachment to God even above renunciation. Renunciation should be the foundation. But as he said, don't. If you move towards the east, then you're getting further and further from the west. You don't have to think about moving away from the west. Just go towards the east, and you're automatically leaving the west. And so instead of thinking about what I have to renounce, what I have to give up, what I shouldn't be doing, think about God. And then the desire for the other side, that will get less and less. So think about the positive. So attachment to God and prayer. Brahmo devotee. Which one is the way? Love or prayer? So that's the nature of the mind. The mind wants to know, well, why should I do two things? Give me one thing that is better. Master, first love and then prayer. The master sang, cry to your mother Shama with a real cry, O mind. And how can she hold herself away from you? How can Shama stay away? So here, first love and then prayer. Why? Because why are you going to pray if you don't have some love at first? So, of course, here he's not talking about intense love for God. That itself comes through prayer. But first to have an orientation towards God, a desire to go towards God, and then prayer will come more naturally. If somebody has no interest in God or spiritual things, why are they going to pray? So first, cultivate an orientation towards God, an interest, a desire to move in that direction. And then prayer will help you go further in that direction. Continuing, the master said, and one must always chant the name and glories of God and pray to him. An old metal pot must be scrubbed every day. What is the use of cleaning it only once? Further, one must practice discrimination and renunciation. One must be conscious of the unreality of the world. So yes, one must also chant the name and glories of God. So that also is something that is highly recommended in the Hindu tradition in general and by Sri Ramakrishna, the chanting of the names of God and the glories of God. That is, the glories of God through kirtan, through the Sahasranamas, that is the 1,000-name texts of Vishnu, of Uma, of Lalita, etc., of Shiva, and again, kirtan. An old metal pot must be scrubbed every day. So again, that calls to mind Totapuri. When Sri Ramakrishna asked Totapuri that you have attained to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, why do you practice meditation every day? And Totapuri said that one must polish one's kamandalu, because the kamandalu was made of brass that he had, and most kamandalus are made of brass, bell metal. So one must clean it every day to keep it shining. And so therefore I practice meditation to keep the mind fit. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, but if the kamandalu be made of gold, then there's no need for shining, for polishing. Meaning that if one has attained to perfection, then the mind has become gold. Then there's no more practice. There's no more, nothing is needed. One remains in a state of perfection which never diminishes, is never affected. And so here, he's saying that an ordinary metal pot, it has to be scrubbed or it will be tarnished. And so why do we have to go on repeating the name? Why should we go on doing japa, repeating the same thing over and over again? Because that is what polishes the mind. If we don't do that, then the mind falls back into its ordinary state. And so we continue repeating the name in an effort to polish the mind, to cleanse the heart. So further, one must practice discrimination and renunciation, he says. One must be conscious of the unreality of the world. So yes, that has to be there. So there's the positive, going in the positive direction. And then there's also the renunciation and discrimination, which begins to sever our connection to the ordinary view of the world. So the most important, again, as he says, is love for God, and then prayer in order to develop further that love for God. But then the practice of renunciation and discrimination to weaken our attachment to the world. I've just been reading the last couple of days in the Great Master, the Lila Prasanga, the life of Sri Ramakrishna by Swami Saralanandaji, where he tells about the days in Shampupur and Kashipur, where Narendra, the future Vivekananda, noticed that some of the devotees were beginning to try to go into ecstasy. That is, they were trying to stimulate their emotions through kirtan and everything so that they could pass into ecstasy. And he saw that that was founded on a great weakness. That is, that they were not practicing renunciation. They were trying only to enjoy the state of emotional excitement that comes through kirtan, which is why Swami Vivekananda didn't emphasize kirtan when he formed the order, because he saw that, and he says in Raja Yoga and other places, that by that artificial stimulation of the emotions, yes, one might even go into samadhi, but then one has a terrible reaction to it, and one goes down lower than one was before. And so more important is the practice of discrimination, renunciation, and so forth, in order to sever our interest in the world. Otherwise, that remains, and we keep trying to go towards God. We work ourselves up into an emotional frenzy through kirtan, and then we fall back because the attachments to the world are still there. And so these have to go along together. So then the Brahmo devotee asks, is it good to renounce the world? Master, not for all. Those who have not yet come to the end of their enjoyments should not renounce the world. Can one get drunk on 2 annas worth of wine? So here, again, this was often Sri Ramakrishna's advice, that one shouldn't renounce the world prematurely. Yes, if one has a spirit of renunciation, then and the circumstances to allow it, then yes, renunciation is a wonderful thing. But such people are few in number. But just because one has a temporary renunciation brought on by some disillusionment with the world, that's not enough to renounce the world, because that will wear away. And then all of the old desires will come back in full force, and one won't be able to sustain the vows that one has taken. And so for most people, he advised them to stay in the world, but to practice spirituality in the world. And gradually that spirit of renunciation would come, and the desire for God would come as well. Brahmo, what is the meaning of the end of enjoyments? Master. Oh, we did. Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Brahmo, then should they lead a worldly life? Master. Yes, they should try to perform their duties in a detached way. Before you break the jackfruit open, rub your hands with oil so that the sticky milk will not smear them. The maidservant in a rich man's house performs all her duties, but her mind dwells on her home in the country. This is an example of doing duty in a detached way. You should renounce the world only in mind, but a sannyasi should renounce the world both inwardly and outwardly. And so should they lead worldly life, then Sri Ramakrishna says yes. But in the midst of that, practice detachment in the midst of doing one's duties, as well as practicing devotion. As he says, before you break open the jackfruit is filled with sticky juice. And so before you break it open, you rub your hands with oil so that your hands don't get sticky. And so in living in the world, practice detachment, practice prayer, worship, thinking of God, plus detachment, and then one won't sink into the world. The idea of pravritti marga and nivritti marga, that is the marga of engagement with the world, and nivritti marga, the practice of leaving the world. Nivritti marga, leaving the world, is for those who take up the path of sannyasa, of renunciation, external renunciation. For those living in the world, then satisfying one's legitimate desires in a good way, in a sanctioned, morally good way, that won't hurt. Then by doing that, by practicing detachment, by practicing prayer and worship, while satisfying one's desires for the world, then the mind gradually gets prepared for a higher spiritual life. And one gradually begins to feel that there's not that much to be had in the world. The world is not this bowl of cherries, as we say in the West, in English, a bowl of cherries that's just there to be plucked and to be enjoyed. No, the world is a difficult place with lots of suffering, more suffering than happiness. And so gradually, if you approach the life from this standpoint, the standpoint of detachment plus spiritual practice, the mind becomes clear enough so that you begin to see that. And then the world doesn't even look attractive. The world doesn't even look attractive. You want to rise above the world. So if one tries prematurely to renounce the world out of a momentary enthusiasm, then again, as I said before, one finds that all of one's desires surface again and carry one away. But through the gradual practice of living in the world, satisfying one's desires for enjoyment, but in a regulated way, while practicing spiritual life, gradually the taste for other things begins to dissipate, because really there's nothing in them. Why do we desire the world so much and the pleasures of the world? First of all, because of the biological urges, the desire of the senses to experience and to taste, but also in spite of experiencing over and over again the unsatisfactoriness of sense pleasure, still the mind longs for them and can't give them up because of the restlessness of mind. As the mind becomes more calm, then you begin to see clearly that, what am I doing? I go for these things again and again, and there's nothing there. There's nothing there, and yet I go after it again and again. And then you begin to get the power to say, no, I don't. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. I want something else. I want something higher and deeper. So we'll stop here for today. And next time we'll continue where we left off. Let me give announcements. First of all, let me apologize. We got off to a rough start today for nobody's fault. Those of us here tried everything to get things working, but we couldn't get the sound right until we had to change microphones. There's some sort of interference on the wireless mic. And so we're sorry that we got off to a rough start. And for those of you who stayed with the process until we got it working, we appreciate your patience. On Sunday, I'll speak on Ganesha, the deity Ganesha, the history, the development, the meaning, etc. of Ganesha. And next Tuesday, we will have the Bhagavad Gita class at 7:30 in the evening. And then next Thursday, we will again have this class at 11 o'clock in the morning. So for the rest of July, our classes will continue, hopefully unimpeded. We're not expecting anything to get in the way of any of our classes. But you never know. As we found out this morning, we almost had to cancel the class this morning because of technical difficulties. So I'll give a closing chant. And the end of the program is also going to be a little rough because after I chant, it's not going to be a smooth cutoff. I have to go to the computer to try to see if I can edit what has just happened. So again, we appreciate your patience. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampa Dhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha.